You're listening to Oh My Health, There Is Hope podcast.
When your heart is aching and your world is shaking, don't give up. No, no, don't give up.
Hi, Andreas. It's Jana, and I am here with Geri. It's Maroney, right?
Right. Yes.
Okay. So I'm here with Geri Maroney, and I'm going to get her started on her 4-part series, and this is part 1. So 3, 2, 1. Hello, and welcome to Oh My Health, There Is Hope, the podcast. I'm your host, Jana Short, and today I'm here with a very special guest, Geri Maroney. Geri is a cancer survivor, and she understands the healing the emotional wounds from a cancer diagnosis is as important as healing the physical wounds. As an advocate of hope and a champion for courage, Geri empowers cancer survivors and warriors to strengthen soul-nurturing techniques that allows them to release negative emotions, boost courage, and rebuild self-confidence so they can live inspired lives that bring them joy. And this is her series, Learning to Be Big and Brave. And the very first part of this series, Geri, is your story and why you're showing up and doing this and why it is now like your passion-driven purpose. So do you want to share your story with us?
Absolutely, Jana. Thank you very much for having me. I'm looking forward to working with you on this series. I was diagnosed with breast cancer in 2015, and it took me down a path I would have never expected, right? I was the person who did my mammograms very religiously every year, never skipped, and I didn't feel a lump, but there was cancer. And so shocking and surprising. And, spent a good part of that next year going through the phases of the medical steps that were necessary. But one thing that I discovered along my path was that there was almost dual tracks. They didn't run exactly concurrently. They sort of staggered with one another. But I felt like after I had gotten through the adrenaline of dealing with the medical aspects, then there very suddenly became this heavy burden of emotion, PTSD, sadness, anger, all of it that I just didn't know what to do with. And so I began journaling and writing down, mostly to get heal my own mind. But then as I did that, it laid out for me very clearly and very beautifully a story of rebirth and reawakening. And so I call my book Beautiful Lady, and it walks through from the day before I heard the news up and through all that darkness towards when the light finally turned back on and I got to sort of rediscover how to create life after cancer.
I love what you're doing. And by the way, I think that people always focus on the health side and not the emotional side of coming out of any diagnosis. And I don't think what people who haven't experienced that realize is it does come with depression and anxiety and even survival remorse when you do survive it. Like, why me? Like, when's it coming back? When's the next shoe dropping? And I don't think those are really addressed in the medical field because they're just focused on getting you through the cancer diagnosis, whatever that looks like. So I'm so glad that you are stepping up and being brave and being that voice. What are some of the first steps like people need to understand about what they're, first of all, first step is anything you're feeling can be validated. It's okay, right?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely, it's okay. And feel it. Really take time to feel it. Like I promised myself in the beginning, I thought, there must be something I'm meant to learn. I can't believe that I would go through something this difficult without, some lessons. And so I had sort of made a promise to myself in the beginning to be open and keep my heart open as best I could with that heavy burden to see, what might come to me along the way. And so it is absolutely critical that number one, women understand they're not alone. And this is not, you're not weak, you didn't fail, nothing is wrong with you. This emotional healing is an important step that everybody skips. And that's not healthy for us as we continue down our journey. So for me in the beginning, it was fear and anger, and they go hand in hand, right? When you are so consumed with fear, anger becomes a mechanism of control to try, right? Anything to try to get control. So for me, those were two emotions that I bounced back and forth with for a very long time. So, just encouraging your listeners to honor whatever feeling it is, name it, and then sort of feel it. And, I have some fun little tricks that I learned along the way in helping to release it. So we'll get through that as we enter the series.
I am super excited about this because I had to have a double mastectomy, and I remember being what I thought was super brave. I don't remember the fear and the anger. I'm just like a get her done kind of girl, and like, just get it done, whatever I have to do, right? I've got things to do, a life to live, and this needs to be taken care of. I want to take care of it. But I didn't pay attention to that emotional side. And my husband found me one day in the closet on the floor, sobbing, not able to function because it all hit me in the face. Like, it was big. Instead of doing the process as I was and feeling the feelings as I should have, I just kept pushing it aside, trying to be brave. And by the way, you're brave no matter how it ends up going for you. Just living through that is brave. Let me tell you, you are big and brave for sure.
Absolutely. From the very first day, you are big and brave. And so, to your point, I think that's what a lot of us do. I mean, I had been that person my whole life. Like, I'm a go-getter. I got stuff done. This is not part of the plan. I need to get it done and off the list so I can get back to the plan. And so, but with this cancer journey, same thing. Like, there were days when I just was inconsolable, and I was an empty nester living alone. And so those are not good combinations when you are, really struggling with these heavy emotions, but good to name them and listen to them, honor them, and then move past.
And by the way, Geri, I'm so glad that you connect fear and anger, because a lot of people are like, it's two totally different things. And it's not really, because I will tell a mother, think about a time your child's 2 hours late, you can't reach them on the phone, and you are full of fear. Are they okay? I just want them to be safe. Could they've been in an accident? Are they laying in a ditch? Did somebody hurt my child? And then they walk in the door. And the first thing that happens is like, you're like, oh, where were you? Yes. It's so,
and you're so angry.
Yes, it's the same emotion.
Mm-hmm. And I learned that. Like, I didn't really realize it because I did have anger right away. And then, someone helped me understand that when fear reaches a certain overwhelming level, just like you described in that case of the mother and the 3 a.m. child's not home thing, when the fear is sort of relieved, the anger manifests. And so, really, really critical to understand the phases. And, understanding too, that as women, we didn't do anything wrong to get breast cancer. It's not a burden that we should carry, that it's our fault in something we did. Like, I worked too hard, I had too much stress, I shouldn't have done all that, I shouldn't have done this. That we have to learn to let go of those things as well.
And another thing, that when you say you have to name it and be able to experience it, that's really the hardest part. Because for me, it was the hardest part, obviously, because I didn't even do it. I didn't recognize it, because I don't like to live in those negative spaces. Mm-hmm. Just because I don't want to live in that negative space doesn't mean I shouldn't experience that negative space for the time to, it's a process, right? The bad part is, if we don't process it in a healthy manner, we end up living in that negative, angry, fearful space because we didn't process it.
That's exactly right. And I've heard people say, you can come out of cancer better or bitter. And so, super healthy to get to the better part. So that's what I try to teach women and those that I speak to, is that it's necessary that we go through that little, well, it's not a little storm, it's a big storm, but it's necessary that we ride it out and face it head on so that it can end. So that, just as you said, we don't drag those things on with us. And another, thing that I learned along my journey is, man, I had a bag full of, crap I had been carrying for my whole life that I didn't even know I didn't deal with it, right? But as I started to kind of clear the slate here, there were a lot of historical things that I needed to release.
And for those of you who think that's foo-fooey, it is not. It makes an impression on our beings. It really does. And how we move forward, we carry that with us. And so recognizing that this isn't even my baggage. This is a baggage from somewhere else, someone else. So it's time for me to pack it back up in that bag and give it back.
Burn it. That's what I talk about. Is I have a book in our chapter in my book called Burn Your Worries. And it's a little bit like that, where you finally release yourself forever and always from that baggage.
I think that you starting to journal, I think that is kind of key for those of you who don't like to journal, which I'm one of them. So I completely get it. I just am not that feely, emotional kind of person who wants to put it out there. But let me just tell you, my mom had a gratitude journal. She did it for like all of 3 days. She did it, right? And when she passed, which will be like 12 years this Mother's Day. So Mother's Day is always a real joy for us around here. But I remember we found that journal, and inside that journal had a little message basically about what she was grateful for. And each one of her daughters had this little message. Like mine was, I'm grateful today because Jana called me at work just to say hello.
Aww.
I love her calls. And I clipped it out with one of my favorite pictures of her and framed it. And that meant the world to me. So those things we're journaling are things that they're gifts that we're leaving for the people behind, right? Or somebody, maybe one of our great grandchildren are going to suffer and walk our journey, and they're going to have us right there holding their hand. Ooh,
exactly. Exactly. And we don't know who needs to hear those words, but there are many people who need to hear them. I just this morning received a lovely note back from someone who had watched my weekly Facebook Live yesterday, where I talked about being a sailor and facing the storm head on and all of that. And she's not a cancer warrior, but she sent me a note and said, just that lesson and that notion of, holding on, but also releasing were the words she needed to hear yesterday. And so that brings me honor, right? Because it is being vulnerable. It is not that easy to put the story out there, but it's so necessary. I just feel, so driven through my journey to make this better for women who come behind.
So, Geri, I know how terrifying it is to put your story out there. For me, being sick was a weakness, and I didn't want to appear weak. And so I took 2 years before I told my story. And now I completely understand that our stories are our superpowers. They are the strength that our journey has given us that we need to voice into the world, because somebody out there, that could be their message of hope that they need to get them to that next step. So I am so proud of you for putting yourself out there and being that voice and showing women it's okay.
Thank you. Yes. Thank you. I will tell a nice little story that sort of gave me the extra boost of I'm going to be strong enough. As I was going through my journey, I didn't think I was strong enough. I just didn't think I could do it. And so I would go to bed every night and pray to my dad, who had passed away several years before, to please talk to God and ask him to take this from me. I had been through so many things before cancer. I just needed this relief. And then I started having a dream, and I had the same dream twice, maybe 3 times, where I was out in a restaurant with friends pre-COVID. We were all just having fun. It was great. My dad was standing in the background, not engaging, not speaking, just, giving me the thumbs up and high five. So I would wake up and think, that was really great. I miss him, and, carry on with my busy day. I wasn't getting the message. And then I had a dream where it was just me and my dad. And whenever it was just you and my dad, you knew it was going to be a serious conversation. So in this dream, he sat me down and he said to me, I know you think God isn't listening, but it hurts me to see you struggle like this when you already have everything you need to get yourself through this terrible storm. He said, I need you to stand up and be big and brave and get through. And so that was my lightning bolt from above to say, I will do whatever I have to do to show other women that you do have the strength, maybe buried deeply, but it's there for you.
I love that. And for all of you who are listening, like, I don't get signs like that. You do. I promise you, you do. And all we have to do is be in tune with what's going on. For instance, when I got sick, I knew my body, I've lived with this body for now 60 years. Hello, 60. But I've lived with it. I know everything, every little change. And I get those little whispers in, my intuitiveness. And if I ignore them, it gives me those little symptoms. And if I'm too busy and I ignore those, pretty soon things start to break down. So, like, you have it already in you. I'm telling you, this episode's giving me goosebumps over and over and over again, because I know that you have it in you. Like, that is my thing. When I tell everybody everything you need, you already have access to. You don't need it from anyone else. You've got it. So I love that you just said that. And I love that your dad was your messenger.
He was my messenger. Yeah, that was a special gift for sure.
One of the other things that you talked about is being able to release. And a lot of people feel like releasing is not okay. It's not okay. If I release, I forget. If I release, I shouldn't. Like, they want to hold it. And here's the thing. If Earth is about giving and taking, right? It's about transferring it. It's about receiving that and giving that back. Like, when I get really stressed out, I get my shoes off, I go stand in my grass, and I just release. Like, I ground myself, release, and then pull in all that positive stuff. And honestly, it works.
Yes, I'm glad that you said that, because we have to release. There's only a certain amount of space, right? And so if it's full of the hard and heavy things, you don't give yourself the gift to be open to those signs that are really out there from time to time, and to fill yourself with the positive, that the gratitude and joy. And believe me, it is certainly not easy to be grateful and joyful during your cancer journey. But I really forced myself to think of one thing every day that I was grateful for, aside from waking up, because that was, that's a really big, obvious first one. But some days all I could come up with was the sun was shining, or it was 75 degrees, some fact of the day that I could pull from somewhere, because I just didn't, some days you just need little steps forward.
I hear you. I remember one of my grateful days was I got out of bed. I know. And I'm up and I'm moving out of bed today. Yeah. So I totally get celebrating those little moments of joy in your life. And I feel the same way. Sometimes I struggle with having that joy, because you're allowed to not have joy in the moment. But then one of the nurses asked me, when she noticed that I was dipping in depression and getting the infusions, and it was a lot. And I remember her saying, Janet, you're coming anyways, so why not come filled with joy? You're going to be here anyways. So what's the difference? And I realized, I woke up every morning I got to go anyway. Might as well go happy.
Yeah, well, that was one of those little gifts, right? Where something kind of basic and flip the coin over, look at the other side kind of thing really helped. That's awesome.
It totally helped. I feel like she's been doing this for years, and she was very intuitive to the fact that my mental state had changed. Yeah. And I wasn't coming in hi, how are you guys doing? I was like, oh, I can't do this anymore. I'm telling you, I'm done. But I wasn't, and here I am.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That's beautiful.
I love it. So what are some of the other things that women might be struggling with going through this, since you've been through this? and that they just have to recognize and be okay. So I know there's fear and there's anger.
Yeah.
I know that there's probably guilt. For me, there was shame. There was shame in being sick because you weren't allowed to be sick. Like even as a mom, how many times have you had the flu, and so do all of your children? And
Exactly.
you just want to be in bed, but you're running to the bathroom with them and getting them soup. And you're like, I just want to be sick once by myself.
Just once. Yeah, exactly.
And
Yeah.
so there's shame in being sick because I couldn't show up for my kids. And I carried that shame. Again, somebody else's baggage, but
Mhm.
definitely, what are some of the other things that they might be experiencing that they should recognize are completely normal? It's okay, whatever that feeling is, it's validated. You are okay.
Exactly. Well, for me, I felt a bit like you said, a bit shamed. Like I wanted to keep it a secret. Like no one in my world even knew that I failed a mammogram. No one knew I went for a needle biopsy. No, I just didn't tell anyone because, well, number one, I didn't want to worry them. So I was just going to carry it all by myself. But then, the day that you did hear, I did hear you have cancer, there was no more hiding it. And so I learned on that day that it takes a village. And we have to, as women, as moms, as sisters, be okay reaching out for help, and in whatever form that is. So for me, I have always been the strong, independent one who everybody came to for help. So I learned that I had to be the one reaching out because our families go through our journey as well in their own way with their own emotions. And so a lot of times they don't know what to say. And so we can help them by saying, it'd be great if you did this, or I could really use help with that, whatever. So I think that's one key is don't keep it private. And now's not the time to be Wonder Woman. Now's the time to really let other people take care of you.
I agree. And again, for those who are going through with somebody who's ill, whatever that illness looks like, whatever you're going through is okay. Because I do remember a sister coming to me. I'm the oldest sister. And one of my younger sisters came to me and said, I feel so much guilt because when mom was sick, all I could think of is she so sick every day? Like, why is it every day? And she carried around that guilt. But that's normal. I felt the same way. Like, when is this going to end? Like, why is she sick every day? I'm tired of hearing how sick she is.
Mhm.
And that's okay feeling too. You should not have any shame or guilt. It's the process, right? You are probably tired of her being sick. She's probably tired of being sick,
Right.
but that's an
Mhm.
okay, normal emotion.
Mm-hmm. Exactly right. Yep. Everybody's walking their own path, in different ways in this. And then the other thing that I found is I really, I needed to shut it off. Like I invented something early in my process called Cancer-Free Day. So one day a week, and I told everyone that I knew, and everybody knew, no one could talk to me about cancer on that day. I just needed a break. Like, and so that's what we did. Like, whatever day it was, however many days a week I needed it to be, everyone agreed that we were not talking about cancer, because pretty soon that's the only thing anyone wants to talk about. And that becomes a burden in itself. So that was another sort of early discovery on my journey that I would very much like to offer to others, is give yourself a little break from it.
By the way, I think that is a genius idea, Cancer-Free Day. I love it. One of the other things that we're going to be talking about is you have 3 more episodes coming out all about how you can deal with this on your journey and how you can process. And they're like about releasing, realigning, and rediscovering. Do you want to talk just a little bit about that so they know what the episodes are going to be like coming up?
Yeah, absolutely. So the steps, the release is a little bit about what we've talked about today. It's identifying what those heavy emotions are, why they might be there, and ways that we can heal them, release them because we're carrying someone else's burden, or forgive because of something else. So that's in the release stage. And then in the realign stage, what I found is just as you said about going to your treatments, you had to go anyway. So why not go joyful? It's realigning kind of the way that you think about some of these things. And then rediscovery is giving ourselves the gift of really living the life that brings us joy. Like one other thing that I did was early in my diagnosis, I always wanted to go to Italy. And so I booked an Italy trip like a year down the road, and it was on the books and the flight was paid for. And I was going to Italy come, hell or high water. And so it is that rediscovery where you get to kind of remember who you are in your heart, not who you are as a mom, not who you are as a wife, not who you are as a sibling, but who you are in your heart. And so that's the rediscover part that we'll have some fun with.
I love it. And we're going to put all of Geri's books, all of her information in this, and when the next episodes are going to be coming out, so you can catch the whole series. And I think one of the most important things is because of people like Geri, who are brave enough to stand up and voice everything they've gone through. You don't have to go through it alone. You're not alone. So Geri, thank you so much for being on the show today.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thanks for listening to the Oh My Health, There Is Hope podcast. Make sure to visit Jana's website, bestholisticlife.com, where you can subscribe to the show on iTunes, Google Play, or listen there, so you'll never miss an episode. While you're at it, if you found value in the show, we'd appreciate a rating on iTunes, or if you simply tell a friend about the show. That'll help too. Let's change the world together, one health expert at a time. Looking forward to seeing you next time.